Are we unmuted? We are. We're live. We were just talking about the weather right before this. It is raining, and Olivia is in the middle of a golf tournament.
Yes, not a great day for golf.
Not a great day.
Cold
It's
and rainy.
not lightning, so I'm pretty sure it's still happening. It is for charity, so I guess
Yeah,
there's people out there doing it.
absolutely.
But anyways, welcome. Today we're going to go over Agency Acquisition 101. This is for any agent who is looking to acquire business. So if you're looking to grow by acquisition, this is a webinar for you. Or if you're looking to maybe sell, this could also be a webinar live chat for you. I'm Rachel Brameyer, VP of Business Development on the Senior Marketing Specialist side. And today we have a special guest, Clint Guier. He is the Executive Vice President of Senior Benefit Services. I'll let you do a quick introduction of yourself as well.
I'd love to. Yeah, so I've spent my entire career in the Medicare space working with Senior Benefit Services. I was an intern there back in 2003, and so now I help run the career side of our division, which is Senior Benefit Services. Been there for 22 years now, and we've got about 38,000 folks on Medicare that we serve, and started in the acquisition space about 4 years ago. So there's been a big learning curve, but just excited to share our experience with you guys today. Hopefully you can learn from what we've learned over the past few years and keep you from making some mistakes when it comes to acquisitions.
Yes, and This is a really good time to ask questions. We are going to have a text line available as well throughout this. And if you do have questions, please throw it at us. I also head up the transition division. So if you have any questions at all on any side, please throw them at us. We can answer them live. And this is going to be recorded. So if you have questions or you maybe don't get a chance to hear the whole entire thing, you can hop on later and listen to the recording. But without further ado, let's jump into our first question. So you've had a ton of experience with acquisitions, with acquiring large books of business, acquiring small books of businesses. Some of those people are retiring, which is usually what comes to mind, but we've run into some that are maybe organizations who do financial or under 65 group or other lines in general and just wanting to offload the Medicare side.
Yep.
So you've run into all sorts of scenarios and situations, acquired thousands of policyholders. So tell us a little bit about your experience
Sure.
and what you've learned from all of this.
Yeah, going back to 2021, before that, we've been dreaming and talking about how do we get into the acquisition space for years. In our organization, we want to be a one-stop shop for anybody's Medicare insurance needs. So whether that's on the brokerage side, which SMS, you've spent your career over there doing a wonderful job supporting brokers, bringing insurance agents into the Medicare space, which is what we do on the SBS side, kind of training them from the ground up. We knew there was a need that we can support people while they're in the business, but how do we support them when they're trying to exit the business? And that's kind of where Acquisition Pathways was birthed from. And so up to this point, we've acquired 31 books of business, 22,939 policies
Thousands.
through those 31 acquisitions. Some of those were just books of business that we purchased. Some came with office space. Some came with actually agents that rolled up under our SBS model. And so we've seen about anything and everything, books into the thousands of clients and books as small as, 20, 30 policyholders. So
Yeah, and it sounds like one of the big niches you have is retention of the clients. Like
absolutely.
you're maintaining the relationship. So let's do relationship retention. I
Yeah.
like that, the alliteration. So I think that's a nice little niche that you've created for agents as well.
I feel like that's worth noting. There are other people in the acquisition space that are simply looking to make an asset purchase and ride the renewals out. There's a lot of folks that do that actually out there. Our model is kind of the antithesis of that. We want to nurture these books of business, the clients. We want to grow these books of business. We want to make sure there's continuity of care after the sale. To where those customers are taken care of. So that's really kind of our niche in the acquisition space. We're going to take great care of these clients post sale.
I love that. Yeah, I think that is. I have seen a lot of situations where people will just buy the policies, and that is an option too if you're looking to sell. I know a lot of individuals are probably just looking to buy a list, but that is a unique proposition, and just to know that it's out there
Yeah,
for that relationship retention that you could have to maintain everything that you've built, because a lot of those clients are, you probably run into that quite a bit, where a lot of those clients are their family, their friends, people that they see at church and at the grocery store. So you probably run into that quite a bit.
absolutely.
So agents obviously want to ask themselves, what is their true capacity for growth? Because when you're looking to grow by acquisition, you have to think about, this is a massive amount of people, policyholders that you're adding. So what should an agent think about before they choose to take on this endeavor of buying a book of business?
Yeah, ultimately, I think the first question you need to ask, what's my goal? Why do I want to get into this acquisition space? Am I trying to buy out a competitor in my local area? Am I just trying to scale up my business because I can see how profitable the policies that I've brought on in personal production have been for me? And if you're looking at maybe other traditional lead sources, maybe you've been buying direct mail or some sort of online leads, telemarketing leads. There's 1,001 lead programs out there, and you say, well, maybe I can acquire relationships cheaper than I can acquire leads that are out there in the traditional market. So really, what is your goal? Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to, come up with generally a sizable amount of money, and you got to make sure you get a return on that investment. And
So you've
it
got the
takes work.
financial side you've got to prep for. What about other things that you have to think about? Is there like staffing or?
Yeah, you've got to have the infrastructure, certainly. We have a lot of that behind the scenes. We've got an in-house CRM, and so we can track every single policy that we buy. We can track the retention of that. Every single relationship that we have purchased with these customers, we can track. Have we brought in a referral from that customer? Have we put additional product lines in the home? Who's going to provide that service and
So
support of the clients?
continuity and what you're putting into the CRM is probably really important, and making sure that every person is adding things correct and that you're tracking so you can actually see the growth model.
Well, the data is paramount,
Yeah.
and we've seen anything and everything when it comes to data. We've seen file cabinets with Manila folders.
You got the
Um,
pilers, you got the
That's
filers.
right. And we've seen, the cleanest, most beautiful data in Excel spreadsheets, and it can be manipulated and easily uploaded into our CRM. So there's a lot that you have to factor in when it comes to looking at a potential purchase when it comes to
So
the
if you
data
were
as
looking
well.
to sell, you would say probably clean up your data. That's going to make the process a lot smoother.
Absolutely.
Make sure that your CRM is accurate or your policyholders are still in the books. You've got accurate contact information if you're looking to sell. But as a buyer, that's probably also important to be looking at as well. So
Extremely important. You have to know very clearly. The industry calls it due diligence. You need to do your due diligence before you go in to these potential negotiations with the seller to make sure you understand exactly what it is that you're buying.
So we kind of pivoted into our next question, but I'll make sure it's like an actual question we've
Yeah.
asked. But um, obviously, when you're looking at a book of business, you're making sure that you've had a ton of questions and ton of research and data that you've pulled from that previous buyer. What should an agent prepare or ask a seller
Yeah, that's a great
or a
question.
buyer? I guess you're a buyer, the seller, prior to you purchasing it.
Yep. So my first question would be, why? Why are you trying to sell this business? What are your plans post sale? You need to understand: are you going to have a partner in that area with the book of business that you bought? Or are you going to have a competitor with that book of business? There's some people that, well, there's a lot of different reasons people sell. Some people are in a financial situation where
Mm-hmm.
they need the money. Some people are truly exiting the business. Some people are
Sometimes
focusing
it's
on
health. I've seen that before
health
too.
related issues. We've seen some, unfortunately, seen some cognitive decline for agents. Ultimately, there's a lot of folks that hang on in this business simply because they don't have a good exit strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to understand what their motivation for selling is. Ideally, you're going to have a partner there post sale. You want the acquisition to be a win-win. A lot of people go into a negotiation win-lose. When it comes to purchasing a book of business, especially in the Medicare space where we focus, you want it to be a win for that seller, because that seller can be your biggest cheerleader in that area where you're servicing those clients. And like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned, Rachel, your seller typically, if they've built their business like a lot of us have, you're still in relationship with your clients, just in a different capacity. You're going to run into them in
Mm-hmm.
church, in the grocery store, at your grandkids' little league games,
Yeah.
and so you want to make sure that they are still singing your praises post sale for years to come, because that's a feeder that gives you a better return on investment on that book of business, because there's still, as people and their centers of influence still come in, they're going to refer that Medicare business or that business to you.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're talking to these sellers and asking, what is the capacity that you have? Like, how are you communicating with your clients?
Yeah, certainly you
Um,
want to know how the book was built.
how is the
And
book
there's
built?
a lot of
Why are
different,
you selling?
right, there's a lot of different ways that people build their books of business. Some are extremely customer focused. Some are built completely over the phone. Some people do annual reviews with their customers. Some people sign them up for a Medicare supplement and never talk to them again. So those are vastly different types of businesses that you're buying, and books of
And you're
businesses
probably
that you're
buying their
buying.
reputation too. So
Certainly,
how do you
yeah.
enhance that or at
You,
least continue on with that
I would
reputation?
say that goes into the due diligence. If you're, buying an agency or book of business that was built in one community, you want to get involved in that community and figure out what kind of reputation that individual has, because there's all kinds of folks in this business, and some are amazing and some don't do as good as others.
I know I've talked to you before about buying books and digging into all the things that they get involved with in their community. You mentioned Little League. Like, I think you mentioned like that they had sponsored a little league team. So
Yeah.
like you don't want to take something away that the community already enjoys. So
Absolutely.
like make
Yeah.
sponsorships. Yep.
Sponsorships, if they're supporting, nonprofits, Rotary groups, Kiwanis, all of those
Oh man.
clubs, you're going to get into the weeds with these individuals if you're doing your due diligence correctly and see exactly, what kind of involvement they had, because you
Hmm.
don't want to go in and gut those types of expenses out of the business to the detriment of the long-term sustainability.
So in terms of, and this I don't think we even had on the list, but I think it's important to even bring up retention and like retention strategies.
Sure.
So you mentioned having a really good relationship with the seller. How have you found success in retention of the
Yeah.
policyholders after you purchase?
Yeah. So anytime we purchase a book of business, we're plugging one of our agents into that book of business. So they're not going to be serviced by a call center. They're going to be serviced by a real person. So at the very beginning, post acquisition, every single one of those customers is going to get a letter making the seller the
Hmm.
hero of the story for choosing our agency to provide that
I
continuity of
like that.
care.
A
And
hero.
it's also introducing the new agent or agents. If the book's large enough, it might take 2 or 3 agents to service that book of business that agency built up. So it's going to introduce the agents, and it's also going to introduce our staff behind the scenes, our claims department, customer service. All of those individuals are going to be providing the continuity
So
of
they get
care
to see the
post sale.
names and the faces of the people. And I like the hero because that person then is still allowing those clients to not be orphaned to the carrier.
That's right.
So I like that you're putting them in a hero light. I
Yeah,
like that.
you don't want the customers to be, confused about what's going on. Why did my agent decide to sell my relationship to somebody else? So we make that seller look very, very good, and we also make them very comfortable with next steps. What is this going to look like? Who am I going to be working with? We reassure them that none of their coverage or benefits change. So you want the customer to feel very comfortable post sale as well.
I love that. So, this is never a fun topic, but I think it's going to help save a lot of people. Is there any mistakes that you would want to share that maybe you've learned from now that you've purchased 35 different books of businesses plus?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've got a personal philosophy is there's not much in life that you need to figure out yourself. Somebody has done it before you. Many people will sit down and write a book about it.
Yeah,
What took them a
I feel like you
lifetime to
should now.
figure out. Yeah, what took them a lifetime to figure out, they'll write the book on it, and you can buy that book and learn everything they did. So I would say you're not alone out there. If you're on here, certainly you've got some kind of relationship with senior marketing specialists, or you've heard about what we do, and you got some great people to rely on. So we want you to learn from our mistakes, and some of those mistakes are embarrassing to admit, but we've bought policies that we could not get the commissions assigned over. So you need to know what you're doing. Thankfully, we work with a great company called Excess Capital that's been valuing books of business for decades now. And so they've, saved us from a lot of pitfalls. But that would be one, buying ACA. Found out the hard way you can't really buy ACA business. That business has to be moved in order for
Mhm.
those commissions to start flowing for you. So your product types are extremely important when it comes to looking at a book of business. You've
Product
got
types and carrier
a
rules.
carrier rules, and you know a lot more on that end than I, Rachel, with the carriers that are easy to work with and the
Hmm.
carriers that are challenging to work with. But you certainly will find out the hard way if you haven't sought out
So that is a good
advice.
point that I think we haven't touched on, but a lot of times when you're looking at buying and selling, there's two avenues. You've got the legal side, you've got the documentation where you're signing, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure that it's actually in writing that you purchased it. But then you also have the carrier side.
Yeah.
The carriers sometimes don't see it like you purchased it. They see whoever is the principal and the paperwork that they have signed with the principal, and making sure that you've reassigned that principal or reassigned ownership of those policies. So that is a side that we can help with tremendously. Obviously, you'd want to talk to a good attorney, which we have a very good attorney that you've worked with and created all the good legal documentation. But whether you're selling or buying, just knowing that there are those two sides that you need to make sure that you've done your due diligence on, and like you just said, made sure that you can actually buy the business, that you actually own the business
Right.
if you are selling, or if you're buying, does that person actually own the business?
Right. We've seen principals that didn't actually own the business because they had contracted agents below them incorrectly. They didn't seek out Rachel's advice before they did that. And so they're trying to sell us policies that they don't actually own and can't sell. And we're the ones generally that have to break that news to
Mhm.
them. And so, the other thing that you'll see is you've got agencies they've got their hands in a little bit of everything. And,
Mhm.
sometimes they're wanting to sell the whole portfolio of products, and there's just some products that we're not interested in
Mhm.
buying. And so
Yeah,
you've
so
got
I've seen that too. And having each division of your company set up with separate LLCs and even your office building, which is another, I think, I don't know if it's been a mistake that we've made, but we've seen agents trying to sell, uh, making that mistakes where the building that they own is also lumped into that LLC. You may not want to buy all of that. You may not want to
correct.
buy the building or
Or the
the
furniture in the
whole
building.
the furniture in the building, the contracts that they have already in place with the fax machines and printers. So just making sure that as a person looking to sell, that you've separated your business. If it's an annuity and then you've got the Medicare division, make sure you've got a separate LLC so that if that buyer wants to only buy one section, they don't have to buy the whole kit and caboodle. They can buy whatever they're looking for. It just
Sure.
makes it a little easier for that transition.
Yep. So yeah, the devil is in the details, as they say. You really need to get down into the weeds with that seller and find out exactly what they've got, how their contracts are set up with the carriers.
We have a really nice walkthrough too that asks a ton of questions that you can bring with you when you are looking to talk to that buyer or the
Yeah.
seller. I keep mixing it all up.
Yeah, and then the million dollar question is, what's the purchase price going to be? That's kind of what everybody wants to know, and that is so varied and nuanced that there's no easy way to answer that question. Of course, agents, I'm an agent. I've got an agency. I know the blood, sweat, and tears and effort it took for me to build that agency. So in my mind, it's worth a heck of a lot more than the fair market will pay for
Hmm.
that business.
And they're your family, they're your
A-
friends. Like, oh,
That
that's
that's
hard.
that's right. And some of those folks, the sellers have known and been serving for 20, 30, 40 years in some cases. And so setting those expectations where reality is before you go down the very cumbersome road of doing your due diligence and reaching out to the carriers and getting all the contracts. I mean, you got to get into the portals, and sometimes there are 10, 15, 20 different companies that agent was selling. It's a lot of work to do that. So if your seller is expecting a multiple of 5x, and the reality is the market pays anywhere from 1 to maybe 2.5x, you've got your worlds apart there on the price.
Hmm.
And so you need to have a conversation with that seller about what are they expecting. What are their goals? What are their plans before you go too far down the road of getting into the weeds?
That is a really good point because a lot of people that I've seen that over and over of like, that's not high enough. The valuation's not what I expected. When he says 1 to 2x, that is renewals. That's not new business either. So that would be like your full year of business if all of it was renewals and none of it was a new paid. So there are a lot of factors that go into it. If you've got a younger book, if they're all turning 65, that's going to be valued a little bit higher versus 80, 90-year olds. If
Yep.
that's your average age, you may want to take a look and see what is my average age, the policies that are enrolled, Medicare supplement versus Medicare Advantage, what state you're in. If there's a guaranteed issue rule in that state, can definitely change the valuation. If you've cross sold,
Yeah, that's a very important point. We've bought, books of business before where the seller trained those clients that certain products were not good products.
okay.
Products that we believe in, that we get behind. Products like recovery care, hospital indemnity plans. If you've got a Medicare Advantage plan to fill in
So
your
trained
bigger
the
gaps,
policyholders, the clients, to
not to
not buy
not
them.
buy that coverage. So
Okay.
that's information you need to know, because if their previous agent, who hopefully they hold in high esteem, has told them for decades, hey, you don't need final expense coverage, or you don't need hospital indemnity coverage, and then the new agent comes in, and one of the first presentations they make is on one of those products, you're going to have some friction there. And so there's just so many little details like that can't be understated, or can't be overstated how important they are to know before you
And I'm
buy
sure
that.
you've learned a lot of those important details from trial and error too.
Absolutely,
Not
absolutely.
always the best way, but That's another reason, like if you would like to learn more, we can give you feedback, we can walk you through it. Please talk to us before you buy a book of business, or if you are looking to sell, we have a lot of resources we can offer and support you through that. So my favorite part of this is actually getting to talk about a success story
Sure.
or stories, if you would like to share a couple,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of it is storytelling. I think a lot of people get stuck in their ways of, I'm not selling because of XYZ, or
Right.
what would I do if I retired, or it just seems like a lot of work. I don't want to worry about that. Like, tell us a couple stories if you can on success
Yeah.
stories.
So I can tell you stories all day. One of the coolest things is that I mentioned we've done 31 acquisitions. All of them have been profitable. So we haven't actually got ourselves, in the red on any of these deals, thankfully. But
Mm-hmm.
it's because we've surrounded ourselves with amazing partners. I mentioned Access Capital. A lot of these relationships SMS has been nurturing for literally decades. So if you go about it the right way, it can be very profitable for your business to step into that acquisition space. The real success, in my opinion, is for these customers that get, in my opinion, a better model of care post sale
Mm-hmm.
because we are so fanatical about customer service. So the customers are winning post sale. That's pretty rare out there in the acquisition space. And there's a lot of acquisitions going on now across, not just our industry, but any industry. So when you've got the customer winning at the end of the day, we track all of our customers' satisfaction.
Oh, I love
So
that.
so I
How
mentioned
are you doing that? Is that
yeah,
e-blast? Is that
we
mailers?
use our Net Promoter Score. So
Okay.
every customer gets an email every year that says on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer us to your friends and family? Right now, as of today, our Net Promoter Score is an 88. So that means almost 9 out of 10 people when
Is
we
that
ask them
rocket
that question.
referrals, or what do you?
It's
Okay.
called Client Circle now.
Okay.
Used to be called Rocket Referrals.
I'm old
Uh,
school. I'm.
yeah, no, they're an amazing resource, great investment for your business because the most important opinion about your business is from your customers. It's not what you think. It's not what
Mhm.
your employees think. It's what do your customers think about your business.
And what do
And
you think goes into that net promoter score? Is it systems and processes? Is it people? Is it a
I
combination?
think it's always putting the customer first. It's doing what's best for that customer. This industry that we're in, it's so easy for people to be taken advantage of. Insurance is complex and confusing. Medicare's complex and confusing. You add two confusing things, and then you put, somebody that typically our clients are 65 and older, and they're
Hmm.
aging. Just such a vulnerable population that when they've got an agent that truly is putting them first and taking care of them very, very well, and doing that not just at the point of sale to get the sale, but they're doing that after the sale, year
Hmm.
after year after year, providing amazing customer service and support and annual reviews. They refer their friends and family to you,
So
and
that's probably why you're not in the red with any of these acquisitions, because you've
because
taken
we're
that
growing them.
mentality, talked to those people, made sure they feel comfortable with all the retention that you've done after the fact, introducing them to the team, and then on top of that, probably doing a lot of extra things that they weren't even getting
Absolutely,
prior.
yeah, absolutely. Birthday cards and newsletters and claims support and all of
So a
those
lot of
things that
systems and processes that support the relationship too.
that's right, and that's where that what is your capacity for growth question that Rachel mentioned in the beginning is so important. Like if you don't have a lot of those processes in place and you're trying to bring on, you know, 100 or 300 new client relationships, but you don't have the key people in place to support that, yeah, it can be okay on paper for a while, but it could also be extremely stressful and it could fall apart on you pretty quick.
Hmm. It sounds like also you've done a good job of supporting the selling agent as well. I've even heard stories of like the selling agent still coming into the office or
The
propping themselves up next to the agent to listen to the sale. And
100%. We want those sellers to be our partners in the community. And so our agents that we pair them up with, I mean, they're forming great
Mhm.
relationships with those individuals. And a lot of them in our situation have been retired, people that are retiring out of the business. This has been their identity, right? Building this agency, the community involvement. They're very proud of that. And it's an emotional thing when they're choosing to walk away from that.
Mhm.
So they if they can still be involved with that servicing agent, still give them some of their tricks of the trade and share some of their wisdom, it helps the whole process go so much smoother for the seller and for our agents that we're plugging in to take care of
So
those
really, if
clients.
that seller is not ready to disappear and ride off into the sunset, if they're willing to sit down and walk through each client and tell the story
Oh
and
my
kind of get you
goodness.
familiar with them, even handhold, maybe even do a combo introduction, that
Absolutely.
helps with the retention
Yeah,
too.
in our space, if you're buying a book of business, let's just call it 100 Medicare clients, you want to hear from that seller, who are your 10 best referral givers,
Oh, I
right?
love
Because
that.
you want to go out
That's a
there
good
and,
question.
and sit down with those people the first and sell them on how well you're going to take care of them. And of course, you got to follow it up with action. But yeah,
Hmm.
you very much, you've got an amazing resource in that seller most of the time if you invest in that relationship with them.
I love that. We did have a one quick question that came in. It looks like Mary is asking, do you use Client Circle for your Net Promoter Score only, or is this part of your CRM as well?
Yeah, so we use Client Circle for all of our clients, or organic and through acquisition. It's not part of our CRM. It's sort of a plug-in that we use. So
Hmm.
it's the company Client Circle does this for us. We upload our new data
So
on a
basically,
weekly
emails the
basis,
clients however often you tell them to, or how does
once a
it,
year.
once a year?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's so important for us. Like we want to know not just what our clients think of us at the time of sale when they still have that warm fuzzy feeling. We want to know, what do you think in year 2, in
I
year
like that.
3, in year 10, and year 15. And our numbers show that they're fanatical about how we take care of their Medicare coverage, because we do all the things that we promise. We under promise and over deliver. So many people get that backwards.
Hmm. Perfect. Well, I don't see any other questions. We'll kind of hang out here for maybe 30 more seconds and chit chat, but feel free to send any more questions in. Any other fun stories you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say, we've brought in 10 agents. So sometimes your seller has very amazing team members around them that still need a good opportunity. So that's something you want to look at. Can you afford to bring them onto your team, ingrain them in your culture, continuing to provide that care for those clients and really give them a great career path to grow. What we see is that sometimes that retiring agent, they've been the head honcho, right? But and naturally so. And their assistants, you can give them a position if you can afford to bring them onto your team to elevate to that person. The clients are already comfortable with them because they've
Hmm.
been in that agency sometimes for years. And so you can add really great people to your team through acquisition if the numbers work out to where you can afford to do that.
I love that. So I'm going to high level, because this is how my brain works, summarize some of the big things that we talked about today as big takeaways. So if you're either buying or selling, I think all of this applies, but one of the big things is making sure that you've done your due diligence on the legal side and the carrier side, and making sure that that person actually truly owns their business and if it can be purchased, because not every carrier has an ability to purchase
Right.
or sell. Like you mentioned, the ACA side in general is difficult. The other big thing is, what is your true capacity for growth? You talked about so many amazing systems and processes that you have in place in your company. So making sure that if you're going to scale and acquire that many policyholders, can you keep the promises? Can you make sure that your level of service is going to be maintained and those clients feel very much taken care of? You talked about the handoff and making sure that the retention stays there because of the what have you done prior? How can we help make sure that that's continued on? But also, can you help us introduce? Can you help introduce us to those policyholders?
Right.
And then also tons of questions asked before you buy, or even if you're selling. We have tons of resources out there if you are even remotely interested. And real quick, I just saw another question come through. It says, what other systems have you put in place to effectively run and service your clients? It's a little off topic, but I think it helps talking about the systems and processes that you'd want to have in place, especially for the purchasing side. Could you talk a little bit more about that before we wrap up?
Yep, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, I've been in the business for 22 years. I own an agency. I've got about 1,500 clients myself that I've put a team in place to take care of them while I focus on acquisitions and growth of the company and of the brand. But in my opinion, the numbers that we see to truly uphold our promises to our clients. One licensed agent, my opinion again, can properly care for about 500 Medicare lives.
I would totally agree with that. I see that all the time.
And the way we care for you get an annual review if you're one of our customers. You're gonna if you have a med sub with us, we're gonna review your PDP coverage for you. A lot of agents, a lot of our competitors don't do that. We feel like yes, it's labor intensive. Yes, there's probably an opportunity cost there that we give up during AEP because we have to spend so much time reviewing PDPs. But the plans change so often, the market changes, prices go up, your client's health conditions change, maybe they lose a loved one, maybe somebody enters a nursing home. So many things can happen in a given year in a retiree's life. They deserve an annual review with a licensed agent, a licensed broker that can shop the market for them. Most of our clients are living on a very fixed income. And so when you can save them $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, they deserve to hear about that. That's also why the majority of our business is referral based. There's so many people out there in this market space that are buying leads. We all know in the lead game, a very, very small percentage of the population responds to traditional leads and advertising. So my philosophy has always been, why don't we tap into the 97% of the population that doesn't respond to direct mail, right? If all the other agents are chasing the 3%, I want to be talking to the 97%. And so it's really just customer focused. We've got a marketing team in place, certainly, that's going to take care of those birthday cards for us. They're going to send help with our input. They're going to craft those annual newsletters to let them know, how do you get registered for your annual review? How do I get on the calendar to come in and meet with my agent? And then certainly the service after the sale, the customer service, claims. We want our clients to always call us. We don't want you to call the insurance carrier. We don't want you to call the doctor's office. Heaven forbid you call Medicare. Always call us. Mm-hmm. And so it's just very customer centric, but we've got, amazing teams in place to provide that support.
It sounds like you've built in really good systems and processes for communication to your clients, but then also just that continuation of care and expectations that those clients then have that you've built up too.
Yep. You never want to leave anybody to their own devices when it comes to communication, right? You cannot communicate enough.
Communication, expectations.
That's right. Very important.
So I appreciate everyone for hopping on and listening. If you want to hear more, you are more than welcome to give us a quick call to 800-689-2800. We have tons of resources available. There's also a lead page in the description box of this video. And then we also just want to say thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. You got to hear from a real live agent who's done a lot of acquisitions and setting that up for success so that it is in the green. So if you do have any questions, please reach out. We're happy to walk you through what that process is, what you need to do to prepare your business for either buying or selling. And we can definitely walk you through that acquisition process.
Yep. Great to be with you today.
Yeah. Great to be with you too. Thank you.
Randy.